Hello, St. Louis sports fans. Welcome back to your favorite St. Louis sports podcast, The Lunatics. I'm your host, Tyler Edwards, here with my co host, Sheldon, uh, or as we like to say, the better John. Um, Sheldon's here to do our Cardinals season preview with us. John, our regular John, is out dealing with some life events and should be back with us shortly. Sheldon, welcome back.
I am glad to be here. Glad to be here. I'm not subscribing to the Better John nickname here, moniker, whatever. But yeah, glad to be here.
Hey, I take shots at John any chance I get. And you know
Yeah,
what? You're already doing better because he's made a habit of, he loves to try to get under my skin mid intro by cracking the can, whatever canned beverage he is indulging in mid intro
yeah.
right into the microphone. But, it's fine. We have fun with it. We roll with it. For those of you who are unaware, Sheldon is a local athlete, previous collegiate athlete, now plays pickleball and was hopeful to star on the upcoming show Pickleball Paddle Battle. Which network that is going to air on TBD, but it sounds like we are getting real close to finding that out.
Yep. Real soon.
All right. More importantly, Sheldon is an avid St. Louis sports fan. He loves everything St. Louis sports. For those of you who haven't been on previous episodes that Sheldon has graced his presence with us for, this will be episode number 3 for you, right?
Yeah, I think so.
By far and away the most common guest star we've had on here. I'm going to call you guest star, not just guest.
Oh, hey, there you go.
You got to have a little fun with it. So, but some interesting things going on right now, namely Dylan Carlson running into Walker.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
his status being up in the air, which can change a lot of what's going on or what we could potentially see as we start the season. Because I kind of had Dylan Carlson penciled in as the everyday center fielder once they optioned Victor Scott down to AAA. Does this mean that we see Victor Scott sooner? What do you think?
It's kind of like what the heart wants and what the brain wants, right? As a St. Louis sports fan, we all, I think, in agreement, would love to see Victor Scott up here doing what he does. We would love some excitement kind of injected into this team, given how, I mean, the populace at large, there, we kind of we made moves that we needed to make, but nothing that was very like exciting and got the pulse racing a bit. And Victor Scott would definitely, some speed on the base pass, some excitement in the outfield for sure. That's what I'd want to see him back personally. What I think is going to happen is they're going to run with Ciani, and as he's our only other 40 man who can play the center field. And that seems like the Cardinal decision. Like everybody as a fan is like, we want Victor Scott, and they're like, we're going to give you this guy instead. So that'd be my guess. But part of me wonders if the injury is a substantial one. It's going to take a minute. That you'd probably give Victor a chance to have a little bit of runway.
Yeah, I could see it either way. I'm not sure. I know you talked about, we did some things, in the offseason address needs. I'm going to hit on the overarching stuff. We can dive a little bit deeper. So the offseason was interesting to kind of get ready for the season. So we, as I put in here, fixed the rotation. We brought in some more veteran leadership because our team needed more leadership.
Yep.
We addressed the bullpen. Edmund had surgery, and nobody was very clear on what the hell was going on with him. Nootbaar got hurt in spring training, and we extended Oliver Marmol. Am I missing anything?
Yep, it's just been a whirlwind of decisions. Yeah.
So part of me wonders is Mozeliak setting up the Cardinals franchise to just absolutely suck as he walks out the door to be like, look, I'm gone and look how terrible they are. They needed me.
I would not put it past Mo, but I also think as bad as it looks, or as boring of an off season as it looks, I do think we're in a similar spot as to where we were last year. you could argue that something. Well, I know. Like if you look at where I think the problem is last year, we had the idea of it being so much better than what it was going to be. There was a lot of things that could have gone wrong to lead to the season that we did, and then things started going wrong, and we had the season that we had. So I think when you match up our teams from last year to this year and kind of put them side by side, it's similar enough that I think, trying to dampen expectations from last year could allow us to bring up what we're expecting the failure to be this year, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think we're going to be a 50 or 60 win team, but I don't think we're going to win the division by a handsome amount of games. I think we'll be in the running for the division. I don't know. It's it's weird.
Yeah, it's also tough, right? When we're used to the Cardinals. I think back to the Walt Jocketty era and the trades and the things that he would do to make sure that our team, we went out and tried to trade and get those guys. And typically that's what we do. We would trade and extend rather than pay the free agent price tag, but we still made the quote unquote splashy moves via the trade market. We were used to, up until the last couple of years, Doug Armstrong doing similar things over the previous 7-8 years. Mozeliak just really hasn't done that. And then even with St. Louis City SC, which in the MLS and soccer world, there's a lot stricter rules on how to do things, but you've still got going out in the offseason and getting players like Nicky Stewart and Thomas Totland and, bringing in these guys to, not always even, and those guys' case, it's not like we're signing, Premier League players, but we're bringing in players that we know are an improvement or they're going to help us win tomorrow and in the future. And we just haven't seen that from Mo, at least not recently. And I think it can really, a lot of people point to, oh, well, not signing Scherzer when he was a free agent, was the downfall of all. Yes and no. I think the other big thing that people really forget about that sent this club into a spiral was Tavares. And when he passed away. And then we were sent scrambling for a bat. We sent a bunch of players and traded for Ozuna. Ozuna was okay for us. I don't ever feel like I never felt like he was an amazing player. I never felt like he was a terrible player when he was in St. Louis. Turns out he's a terrible human being, came out after the fact. But, so, we sent pieces away. We did that, but it really changed the makeup of the team, because we immediately went from, hey, we've got this homegrown young superstar ready to go. I mean, he was the last previous Jordan Walker, really, right? I mean, the last time, and even more so, I feel like Tavares was a much more polished hitter already coming into the major leagues. His first at bat was a home run, if I remember right. I mean, in the majors, so. I mean, the guy was ready to go. Really sad, but that also really impacted how Mo did things. And I feel like he's never really figured out how to get out of his own way after that.
Yeah.
Not to say we haven't had good seasons, but it's just hasn't been.
Yeah. It's always trying to catch up from that moment of, having a surplus in one and needing, because again, while that was going on, Cardinals were still a competitive baseball team, all the way up until last season, if we want to track back a couple of decades. So Mo was tasked with losing that homegrown talent, young, going to be taking a spot in the outfield for the next 10 years, 15 years or whatever. Now he's got to figure out how to not only replace that hole in the farm system, but also putting out an accomplished, product that can contend for not only the Central, but also to make a run. So I definitely don't envy him for being in that spot, but I think I'm with you. It kind of led to where we're at today.
Yeah. He did, quote unquote, fix the rotation. And I'm curious on your thoughts. So recap for our listeners. We had multiple open rotation spots, courtesy of us selling everyone while we still could that were going to be free agents. So we went and we signed the one and only Lance Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
We signed Kyle Gibson. And then the exciting signing, we did get Sonny Gray.
Yeah, that one's worth it.
that one's more exciting.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel about that? I know, I think when we had you on, we kind of talked a little bit last time, right before the off season started, and we talked about like, oh man, if we could get Sonny Gray and one of the other big guys, and then find a fill in piece somewhere, right?
Yep.
Well, we got Sonny Gray, and
Yep.
and more or less a couple of fill in pieces.
Yeah, I think the idea that Mo's going with in regards to putting a team out there, it makes sense. The guys that he signed, right, with Lance Lynn, with Gibson, those are notorious inning eaters. You know, and that's what we struggled with last year, was having guys go. I mean, we struggled to have guys go 4 innings last year, and to be able to go out there and sure, they'll give up some home runs, give up some batted balls in play. If you can go 5 1/3, give up 3 or 4 runs with the lineup that we have projected, hoping that Arenado and hoping that Goldschmidt have bounce back years. It's one of those things that you don't. I don't know. I think last year they kind of relied too much on younger guys to plug in and fill some of those spots when injuries popped up. The thing that frustrates me and frustrates a lot of fans is we had an opportunity to throw money at the issue that we had, to take the sledgehammer to the fly and get that second, that 1B or, that bona fide 2 starter, and then figure it out from there. Then get in your fill-in pieces, and now you've got at least a 1-2 punch when it comes to playoff time. But to go the innings eater route, it's only setting us up for when those guys do get hurt, because they're a year older. They've got a lot of mileage on their arms. Where do we turn to whenever those people go down? And I think that's the fear that I have for this upcoming season.
No, I agree. I think, again, we plugged a hole. It was a need. It needed it. But I mean, there was some big there still is a big option. I mean, we could still bring Jordan Montgomery's still out there. And not that we're going to spend the money on him, but I think we should, or at least we should have kicked the tires more on that piece. And we've got a lot of salary coming off the books over the next couple of years already. I mean, Goldie's coming off the books, things like that, where we could have made something like that work. And we've got the young bats, but I don't know that outside of Tink Hence, we have the young pitchers that are really going to be top of the rotation type pitchers. At least not in the next year or two, right? Like
Right.
that, which is what you're going to need. Another pitcher that I kept saying and begging the Cardinals to go sign, ended up signing with the Brewers, signed back with the Brewers, but Brandon Woodruff was a free agent. And we all knew he wasn't going to pitch this year. But after we went and signed 3 older pitchers, all Sonny Gray's the only multiple year contract. Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are both 1-year contracts with club options for a second year. So we could be 2-year contracts for those two. Signing somebody like that's an ace or a bona fide 2 type pitcher when healthy. I think Brewers ended up signing him for like less than $2 million a year, with a backloaded, incentive laden contract, which would have been huge for us to spend that kind of money and have somebody like that. Just focus on him getting healthy. You don't need the innings out of him this year. So just let him rehab, and you've already got a potential star for you for next year. Obviously that's not what we did, but one of the pitching areas that I was excited about, I felt like we did at least attempted to do a really good job of addressing the bullpen. We got some guys, a couple guys, bounce back candidates, but have been good in the past that have good stuff and played in high leverage games. How do you feel about the bullpen coming up into the season? Do you feel better or worse than last year?
So that's the thing, is like whenever I match up the different phases of the game, when it comes to the starting rotation, I'm a little down. I'm up on Sonny Gray, obviously, compared to who we had last year, but kind of in the same boat. I think the bullpen is where we really are going to make or break our season. I think that's our strength this year. I think we have a very solid bullpen. The additions that we made through trades, also, like you said, the bounce back candidates that we do have can kind of get back to form. The concern with that is your bullpen is as good as infrequent as you use them, or as like if you're burning them out and not having starters go long enough, which is the issue we ran into last year when we're having to go to our bullpen after an inning and a third or 2 2/3, you're going to burn your bullpen out. And in the dog days of summer, there's no recovery for that. It doesn't matter how good your bullpen is. So it's one of those things that if they got the front end right in regards to starters going at least 4, hopefully 5, I think our bullpen's good enough that we have decent enough arms that we can put in positions that they know what their role is, which I feel like last year kind of got convoluted because of we just had to figure out what arms were available that day because so and so pitched 2 innings, yesterday, and we need the closer tonight, and nobody really knew what their role was. I think now we can kind of, especially with what spring training has kind of provided, I think there's a lot of we have some defined roles going out. We have some opportunities for kind of movement in our bullpen too. So we can give the ball to a couple of different guys in some different spots, but everybody, I think, for the most part, knows what their role will be moving into the season, which I think is a huge advantage compared to what we had last year.
Yeah. I agree. I'm excited to see the bullpen. I am concerned. I mean, there is still some injury history there, so there's still TBD on some of that stuff. But definitely more optimism. If again, when I line up the rotation last year to the rotation this year, really the only big difference I see is Sonny Gray. But really, Sonny Gray's career, he's been solid every year, but not every year's been like it was last year for him, right? Like last year was a great year for him, which is why I'm glad we didn't pay some crazy amount for him. I mean, I felt like we got him at a very reasonably priced contract for what he is. But the rest of the rotation, yeah, I don't know that I feel that much better, that other than I feel like we have potential for more innings out of our guys. Than what we got. Flaherty has never been somebody who pitched a lot of innings. Right. Last year was an odd numbered year, so you knew Michaelis was going to suck.
Yeah, it never fails. It never fails.
All of the, Wayno's struggled as he had gotten older to stay healthy, and he ended up being hurting us a lot down the stretch. Really, Montgomery's the one I would compare to Sonny Gray. So I mean, I guess realistically, like I don't know that I felt better about last year's stuff in the starting rotation. I feel better about this year's ability to go deeper into games as a whole. So I know they're like, oh, we need more swing and miss stuff. I mean, Flaherty had swing and miss stuff. Montgomery had swing and miss stuff when he needed to. Wayno could, not anymore really, but back in the day. So it's just, to me, it's apples, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other with our starting rotation. But looking at our bullpen, I definitely feel a lot like we've made significant upgrades and we're in a much, much better place there. We've had the Edmund surgery. Do you feel like how do you feel like that was handled? With everything after declaring that he's going to be our everyday center fielder?
I pray so first off, botched is the one word explanation that I would have. My hope is that they didn't realize how severe the situation was, because they could have addressed that not only like in the press to the media and to the fans earlier, but in the offseason. They could have had a concerted effort, whether they wanted to have a youth movement and like fully commit to Victor Scott being, getting those reps and saying like he's going to be our future. We'll be able to platoon him in once Tommy comes back. But this is a serious enough injury. It almost seemed like they didn't realize how serious it was until he went under the knife. And it's like, oh, we've got to figure something out. And that's what worried me most about the Tommy Edman injury in general, was it didn't seem like anybody knew how long. It just seemed like he might have been out. Is he tinkering with something? Is he going to be back by opening day? And then he goes under, and it's like, wow, he's going to be out for an extended period of time. We got to figure out something to do. And why wasn't anybody on the same page?
Yeah, no, it was an absolute nightmare. And again, it's going to be an ongoing theme talking about Edman and the center field position. But then you also have to take into consideration that he was up for arbitration, and we extended him for 2 years instead of going to arbitration. And it's not that I think that was necessarily the wrong move, right? It's good faith. It keeps players happy when you go to arbitration. For those of you who don't know, essentially you go in front of a court and they argue the team argues that you're not actually worth what you are worth, and tries to, essentially that your employer is telling you you're a piece of shit and we don't need to pay you that much money. And it's not a fun experience.
It's the only sport in the world that does it. It's every other sport you can't. You never trash talk the player that's going to provide something special for you. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous. But so the fact that they avoided it, I'm not upset by. But I wonder if they handle things differently if they knew what was going on. The Newbar injury was one that couldn't have predicted. Things happen in the spring. I just hope it's not too long term. I think Newbar is really the spark plug of this team. He's kind of the heart and soul of the team at this point, and the guy, one of those guys you need to have out there. I don't know that there's a whole lot else to say about it other than he's that glue guy, but also he swings a good bat. He plays great defense. He kind of does a little bit of everything well. We did go out and sign a lot of veteran leadership, some of which we've talked about in our pitching staff, also in the form of Matt Carpenter. But we don't have Yankee Field's right field porch.
No, we do
Yankee
not.
Stadium's right field porch for him.
Nope.
How much he plays is TBD. We're not really sure. I hope it's less than Taylor Motter played last year.
Yeah, please, Lord. I will never understand the Taylor Motter experience.
Man, honestly, that's going to be something we'll be able to reference for years. Is the Taylor Motter experience. That was, honestly, I think if he had been on the roster all year, we'd probably make the playoffs. Should have let him pitch.
Yeah, no kidding. We should have. He filled a lot of holes. We might as well saw what he did on the mound. Yeah.
God, that guy was a mess. But no, it was good. The veteran leadership, I think it'll be interesting. I think Goldie may have, not Goldie, Arenado may have distanced himself from some of the young guys with some of his comments during spring training when he talked about the young guys running amok in the clubhouse and kind of whatever. And it's one of those like, well, if you felt that way, you could have said something. Like you are a leader. And I feel like he struggled with that. He was one of the guys who really wanted the veteran leadership. And don't get me wrong. I mean, players, Lance Lynn, Matt Carpenter, those are the guys that aren't afraid to say something. So I get that. Sure. But I kind of had made this comment to John, and John's not here to defend himself. So, because he kind of disagreed with me, but I made the comment that I felt like both Goldie and Arenado are not the best leaders for a team. And he disagreed, but I still stand by that. I feel like they're great silent leaders. They're the great do as I say, or do as I do, right? Watch what I do. But the great leaders aren't afraid to speak up and say something when something needs to be said. And I feel like those two really struggle with that.
Yeah, I'll take John's side on this here to be a little contrarian as well. But I do agree with the fact that I do think that they're leaders, but not so much in the sense of the outspoken to try and, whether it's rah, whether it's giving a guy kicking the ass to, be better. I think one thing that it's been mentioned before, but especially with both Goldie and Nolan never really firing on the same cylinders at the same time. I feel like Nolan is the type, and I think he's even been out spoken about it, where when he's in a slump or he's not playing well, I think he had one of his worst defensive years. Now that's saying something from Nolan, but making an extra couple of errors here and there, that's not, Nolan's sharp at third, but even when he's at the plate and he wasn't swinging the bat as well, he really just gets in his own shell, and it's hard to get him out of that slump because he presses and he wants to be better. And once he's doing well, I think it's easier for him to reach out to the younger guys on the team and say, let's, follow my lead. Let's do this, like a do as I do type. And then he can talk while that's happening. I never really took Goldie as the vocal type, even when he was an MVP candidate. But I think for Nolan, it's when his play is going well, he can dictate he can kind of dictate a little bit more or feel like he has a little bit more validity in the clubhouse. When he's not playing well, he starts to press. He starts to try and figure out what's going on. then he shuts himself off from everybody. Young guys, old guys, doesn't matter. And at that point, your clubhouse needs to have multiple leaders in order to be successful. If you want to make a serious run as a contender, and you've got to have do as I do guys, you got to have do as I say guys, you got to have say as I whatever combination. You got to have a lot of those guys, because at some point somebody's gonna have to step up, and it doesn't have to always be that same guy.
I agree. And I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the big thing that I think about is you have goalie and you have Arenado who are supposed to be, the guys. Waino is there, but wasn't really there. I think if Waino's healthier, I think he maybe helps fill that void. And I think you're missing a chunk of that with him being hurt so much. I also think it was a big blow to the Cardinals, and I will continue to beat on this. Losing Skip Schumacher to the Marlins was huge because, everyone talks about, we had Pujols and you had Yachty, right? And those guys weren't afraid to call people out. They were both, Yachty was very in your face and vocal. Pujols was the guy who would go pull you aside at the end of the bench, at the end of the dugout, and have a one-on-one conversation like, hey, get your shit together. But politely, and it kind of like Papa Bear style. And I remember, I think, was it Gallegos or somebody tried to show up Ollie when he got pulled out of a game, and he came to the dugout, and Pujols, he kind of grabbed him and just went to the side and was like, that's not what we do. Right.
Yeah.
And you need those guys. I think I've heard a lot out of the camp and otherwise that Brendan Donovan has really kind of stepped into some of that vocal role. But I think really, like I said, losing Skip Schumacher and losing, you have a bench coach who's been there, who's won a World Series, who's done all the things, was a big league player for a long time, and he's a very successful one at that. If he's there to be like, hey, this is what needs to be done and this is how you do it, it carries a lot more weight than, a perennial minor league player or somebody, to that extent that maybe hasn't been there as long. And when you take him out of the equation and he leaves, I also think somebody like Skip isn't afraid to go to somebody like Arenado and be like, look, I know you're struggling, but you've also won 9 Gold Gloves. You've won batting titles. You've done it all. You've been an MVP candidate year in, year out. I need you to talk to some of these guys. Right. And I think he has the respect enough there to do that. I think part of the issue with the veteran leadership also boils down to the coaching leadership and the fact that, Dusty Blake doesn't have that ability to have those types of conversations. Ollie Marmol, I don't think, is able to have those types of conversations with the players, at least not in the same way that somebody like Skip or, et cetera could. I think bringing in Daniel Descalso helps, for this coming year, but I still don't think Descalso is Skip Schumacher. Skip Schumacher, not only had he done it at the major league level, he'd been a bench coach for years before he came to St. Louis. And I think not hiring him as our manager, he was who I wanted for our managerial role when they hired Ollie. So letting him go to Miami, and I say letting him go, he got pulled away and hired away. Right. They hired him as the manager. But look what he did. He took Miami's perennial bottom dweller and took him to the playoffs in his first year down there. So, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, I think that, to echo that point, I think the transition from Yachty, from Waino, from Pujols, we knew on the way out that we were going to be losing those guys. The standout candidate, Skip Schumacher, to help ease the transition to the next era of Cardinals baseball, was sitting right there, and we botched it again. A common theme of the Cardinals front office of the last couple of years.
Hello, my name's John Mozeliak, and I botched it. No. So let's get into the season now. So we know what happened in the offseason. We know what we're going in with. And what we're going in with is not Sonny Gray, even though he was our prized free agent signing because he got hurt. We're going in without Newt Barr. We're going in without Tommy Edman. Who is your opening day lineup right now? If Dylan Carlson is unable to play, now that Dylan Carlson is also potentially, who was your fourth outfielder, is now hurt.
Yeah. Like I said, I think everybody wants to see we want to see Victor get up here. I think that's the, I don't understand why not. That's the right option. Unless you think that, it's only going to be for a few games, and you'd send him right back down, which I don't understand why you just wouldn't give the young guys some leeway. But it's probably going to be Siani in center for the few. It's really going to dictate on how long Carlson's out. If Carlson's out for that
Yeah.
long, then I imagine they go Victor. I pray they go Victor. If it's going to be a shorter term, where it's going to be the first couple of series, then they'll probably run with Siani for a little bit and then turn to Carlson when he gets back.
Who plays left then? So with Nootbaar out, who's your left fielder?
Oh,
I got two candidates.
okay.
One's better defensively, but potentially hurt your infield. So I think your one candidate's Brendan Donovan. He can do it all.
Right.
But I don't love the idea of immediately starting the season yanking him out of the infield again because that's what we did last year, and he played well.
Sure.
But the constant moving positions, changing things, whatever, is tough on players. The other one is Burleson, who's swung the bat well he has. Right, so his defense doesn't. It's not exactly what I would call plus defense from Burleson.
Yeah, no kidding.
He does not make a lot of errors, but that's usually because the ball's already standing still by the time he gets to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say he doesn't get there
and throw it.
Yeah. Given those two options, I mean, I don't know if there's a right option. Like, there's not one that sticks out to me that it's like, because obviously all those guys are going to have to play with how this is going. It's just where you want them, who's DHing, who's that. I do like Burleson's bat this spring. He's been tearing it up for sure. Do we leave him in the DH spot just so he can focus on hitting and keep on hitting the ball the way he's doing it? Do we put him in left field and kind of size everybody down? It kind of just depends on, again, how long is Carlson out?
And how much wear and tear do you want to put on Nolan Gorman's back at second? Because we need Nolan Gorman's bat for the long haul. And so I think that's important to consider too, because, as much as I like Burley and, great guy, if Burley gets hurt playing the field a little bit, I'm less concerned about that than Nolan Gorman getting hurt playing the field a bunch. I want Gorman's bat in my lineup every day. Obviously the infield's pretty well set, right? We're going to have Contreras behind the plate. You're going to have Goldie at first, Arenado over at third. You've got Mason Wynn playing shortstop, and you've got a clear-cut backup for him. And I think a really good potential veteran mentor with Brandon Crawford, a guy who's, again, done it all there, been there before, another part of our anti-youth movement that we've been pushing. And so I think that's important to think about. So we open the season on a rough stretch. So our first series is a 4-game set with the Dodgers. Then we go to San Diego for 3 games, followed up with, and mind you, the Marlins, who, as we just mentioned, were a playoff team last year.
Right.
Followed up with the Phillies, another playoff team. Then we go to Arizona to play the Diamondbacks, who were the World Series runner-up.
Yep. We
get a short 3-game break against the Athletics. Then we go back to the Brewers, who were another playoff team from last year. Mm-hmm. Then we get to the Diamondbacks at home, again, World Series runner-up from last year, and close out with the Mets and Tigers. You never know what you're going to get with the Mets or the Tigers from year to year. Those are 2 very streaky teams. But that first stretch, really leading up through that Brewers and then that second Diamondback series, how quickly do you feel like we know where we are as a team this season? At what point is it when we get done with the Phillies? Is it when we get to the Athletic series? Do you have a good feel for potentially what we're going to see this year? So when we get to the Athletics, we'll have played the Dodgers, Padres, Marlins, and Phillies and Diamondbacks. So we'd have 5 series. All of them, I believe, are 3 games, except for the Dodgers. So it'd be 16 games in.
Yeah.
So it'd be 4 games, 4 3-game series, and then the 4 games would be 16 games in.
Mm-hmm.
At 16 games in, where do you think our record lands after that fun gauntlet to start the season? What's successful to you?
So successful. I would put the bar as low as not getting swept in any of those series. I think is success, especially if we can. I could easily see it being something that we split with the Dodgers on some fluky random stuff, and then we're feeling pretty good, and we get like absolutely hosed by the Padres in the first. It'll just be like an ebb and flow type thing where we can't ever catch like consistency. But if we can find some level of consistency, whether it is a particular phase of play, let's say we're scoring 5 or 6 runs a game, or our bullpen, when they do come in, shut the door, only let up a run, something to that effect, and we end up being 5-11 or even 4-12. I personally am not sounding the alarm quite yet, because look at that gauntlet. I mean, all of those teams were not only playoff teams, but they were legitimate contenders, maybe outside of a couple of those teams. So I think it's something to not sound the alarms too much, even though as Cardinals fans, we love to sound the alarm when things aren't going our way. I think it's one of those things that so long as we can look at our team and say, hey, that's going well, and we don't get swept every series, I have to imagine that we're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. No, I, I think for me, success would be 6-10, 7-9 or better, which, is setting the bar low, but I feel like that gives you a good idea. The series that worries me the most is actually series number 2, going to San Diego, because that team is going to be fired up with their manager, Mike Schilt.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And he is going to want to win. I think if we get through April and we're a 500 ball club, we are going to be set up for success for the rest of the year.
Oh, 100%.
And that's crazy to say, oh, we just need to be 500 through April. But the teams we play in April, I mean, that is going to be huge. When you get into, into May, we start getting more central games. We've got the Reds, we've got the Cubs, we get the Red Sox, who are been hit and miss recently. The Angels haven't been good. We get, more of the Mets and the White Sox. So I mean, like, May is going to be should be a much better month. So if we can get through April at 500 or real close to it, May should be theoretically the month that would allow us to take off and kind of start seeing where we're really at, in my mind, and how we fare against that. We do have a series against the Orioles in there, who are not a bad team themselves, but it'll kind of be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, so you have your May stretch. We did give it gets better June. If we hit the trade deadline, where do we need to be a buyer in your mind when we get to the trade deadline?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I personally don't think that there is any. We could be undefeated, and I don't think we turn into buyers at the deadline this year, given how our offseason went, given the way that even Mo has come out and said that we're going to try and stopgap the rotation, our pitching, to let our lineup kind of do the heavy lifting until our young pitching is ready to kind of jump onto the scene. It doesn't seem like a complete team. So if we were to become buyers, and I guess an important thing to note would be, like, we wouldn't be buying in my eyes, we wouldn't be taking a pending free agent, a UFA at the end of the year type of buying for a run that year. We'd probably be taking out like what the equivalent of Dylan Cease would have been this last trade deadline. That somebody that can give you a playoff run now and then maybe be there for the next 2 years. You might be able to extend them, something like that. But I guess to give you an answer to your question, we'd have to be in control of the Central, if not maybe within a couple of games of the Brewers. I can't imagine it's any other team that's going to be there, but who knows? It's been a while that the Pirates haven't touched that first half share of Central, and then they fall off at the back half. So we'll see. But I'd have to imagine that it's we're somewhere in that a few games out, or maybe a few games above whoever's in second of the Central. We would potentially consider buying, but I would not doubt that at the same time Mo would be like, we're doing pretty good with what we got. Let's just roll it.
Yeah, I think if we're buyers, it's Mo's buying, which is, oh, we traded for somebody like a Jose Quintana just to help us keep enough innings through the end that we don't have to rely on young kids, something like that. Or as you said, it's going to be a, hey, we can trade for this guy and he's a stud and he's still under team control for 2 more years or another year where we can try to extend him during the off season still before he's a true free agent. That's really, Jordan Montgomery-esque, right?
Yeah.
Except for hopefully not a Boris client, so that we can actually have a
Yeah.
chance of extending him before he hits free agency. At what point do you see us become sellers at the deadline again?
I think the trigger
And
on
what
being,
do we sell?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there's anything that we don't sell. I mean, I don't think we sell Wynn. I don't think we sell Walker. Tink Kent's untouchable. Outside of that, I mean, Mo's gonna, I guess, people are gonna start kicking the tires on Nolan, start kicking the tires on Goldie, and he's gonna have his price. And if they meet the price, I think they'll be shipped. I think where we would be as a team for that to happen is I think we'd have to be pretty bad. I know they say typically to make your assessment of a team by Flag Day, which is like the second week of June, which that would give us enough time to kind of equalize from our really rough April, where we have a little bit some easier matchups in May that we can kind of see where we're at by June. I honestly think we'd have to underperform again this year to become true sellers at the deadline. Because I think if we're middle of the pack, third place, 8 games out of first, 9 games out of first, I think that's even more reason to hold status quo. I don't know if enough team, unless somebody makes a really good offer for Goldie or for Arenado. But I think something along the lines of just rolling with what we have, having that veteran leadership to get those young guys even more experience in the second half. If they do go on a nice stretch, I won't say they won 17 in a row, but they go on a nice run, they end up making a wild card spot. That veteran leadership is going to be way better than, whatever you may potentially get for what Goldie might provide you.
10 games out. That's my where I feel like, I think if we're 10 games or more out of a playoff spot at the deadline, you start listening more intently to offers. I'll add to your list of untouchables. I don't think you're going to trade Sonny Gray.
Sure.
Just because, you signed him to be the ace of your staff for the next few years and you don't have anybody else to replace that. And what it's going to cost to replace that is not realistic. So I don't think they sell Sonny Gray. But, outside of the guys you said not that are untouchable, I don't see anybody else being untouchable. I love Nolan Gorman. I think he's got great potential as a bat, but if somebody comes calling with the right price, I don't think that he's untouchable either, especially with his injury history. All right. So I know that we extended Oliver Marmol, as our manager. Mike Schilt still had time left on his contract when we got rid of him. So that doesn't mean just because we extended him doesn't mean that he's going to continue to be our guy. At what point do you feel like we know whether Ollie can actually manage at the big league level long term? So again, for me, it's one really good year, one really bad year, but his really good year, I feel like he had a much better supporting cast around him to support him. Mm-hmm. And so last year he did not. And I think he acknowledged that, we've all acknowledged, like we're all aware of that. So, this year he's got not the same cast he had 2 years ago, but better as far as support cast for him than he had last year. So kind of middle of the pack. So it's, in my mind, it's kind of the rubber year for me as a manager. I think 3 to 4 seasons is kind of my thing for managers. I think, coaches, you should know what you have in your coach after that amount of time. So this year for me is end of the season. I think is, you know what you have in Ollie. And if, he manages this team, in my mind, to, less than, I don't remember what the number I threw out previously this year, but we'll say 84, 83, 84 wins or less, unless those 83, 84 wins make the playoffs. Even if they do make the playoffs, I'm not sure if that's enough to keep him around. I think Mo would keep him around, but that doesn't signal to me that he's a manager who truly knows how to get the job done long term. What about where are you at with Ollie? And this again, I also like to preface: I think Ollie's a great guy. I just am not sold on his ability to manage at the big league level.
Yeah, I would say I'm in a similar boat of your stance in regards to Ollie. I think, really good, one really good year, one really bad year. It's kind of like okay, let's see what you're made of. Got a little bit more support. I would say I'm not making any major determinations during the year myself as a fan. I know there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I think one thing that was good about last year that we can carry into this year is we can't possibly be worse last year or than we were last year than we were this year. So I think we have like a new sense of what bad is as a
I
Cardinals
swear to
fan.
God, if you just jinxed our season,
No. I refuse to believe we're going to be as bad as last year. So that kind of helps, I think, kind of ground us in what our expectations are, especially for Ollie. Now I'm with you on that. Like, I think it's like 85-ish wins. I think if we don't make the playoffs this year, it's not an instant indictment that he's gone. But I will say if we win 83, 85-ish games, don't make the playoffs, and we had a couple of snafus through the year in which Ollie not necessarily mishandles games, because managers will do that, and that's fine. Mismanages players. If you're not able to seem like you have a grasp of the clubhouse, right, of your team, that, we have another Tyler O'Neill type situation, where, we feel like he's calling him out, but it wasn't in a motivating way. Players aren't feeling, I don't know, supported or feeling like because it's a different era of
Wilson
baseball
Contreras,
now.
the
Yeah,
Wilson
another one of
Contreras
those.
situation.
Yeah, like that was ridiculous. Like some of these things that just cannot happen for a team, a major league team in general. But if you want to be a contender, it can't even be on the radar. So if we want to excuse those things from last year, especially leading to a lot of dysfunction and a lot of losing baseball, so be it. They can't happen this year. If you want to be the manager going forward for our team, there's no way that we're going to have another issue where it's another snafu with whoever you want to insert in there, because these guys, a lot of the people on this team now, a lot of the players on this team are going to be here for a long time. Some of them are going to be falling off very soon, but we've got a young core that we're hoping that rallies behind you and you get the best out of them. If you can't do that, you're going to have a short lease and you're going to be out of here real quick.
All right. With that, I agree. I think it's going to have a shorter leash. Winning kind of negates all of this, right? If you win 95 to 100 games, nobody cares what kind of drama happened to the clubhouse. Literally nobody cares.
Right.
I mean, just look back at the early 80s Cardinals. That team, if you talk to anybody who was covering those teams, was an absolute nightmare as far as the personalities, what was going on. There was players who were not even allowed to go to certain cities because they knew they wouldn't play, or they were going to party all night, and so they didn't even come on the road trips, right? And so it's like, but nobody cared because they were winning games. And so, winning kind of is the ultimate, we'll wipe the slate clean because you guys played in the World Series last year, made the NLCS, or you name it, right? I love Mike Shildt as a manager. I thought he did a great job. But, a lot of that is kind of, if you look back, he wasn't always doing great. There were some things that he potentially messed up and mixed up and did at different times. The difference is he kept winning and kept making the playoffs. So, where do you see the team finishing at the end of the year?
If I take off my my Cardinals glasses here and look at the team as an objective spot, I have to imagine we are going to end up in that 83, 85, 87, that little game window there, which I don't believe will be good enough to win the Central. I've got the Brewers to win the Central. I think we'll be close with them. And what I'm most excited about for this team, I think our ceiling is a lot high. It can be higher than that. Okay. I think our ceiling is higher than that 85 game window, I guess, where we're at. than the floor is. I don't think this team. I think this team wins at least 70 games. I don't even if things start going poorly. I think where we were last year. I don't know if we really are able to get that much lower. I've already mentioned that before, but I think given finishing around that 85, 87 games, I think it's going to be close with whoever is going to win this division, whether it's the Brewers, the Cubs, whoever. That is going to lead to some exciting baseball towards the back half, which could be some really good experience for our young core moving forward. So because those games, while they aren't playoff games, they're going to feel like playoff games. You're going to be playing, division rivals. You're going to also be playing other teams that are trying to make the playoffs too. That kind of experience is super important for these young guys to get now, so that way they can carry it on when we end up getting this team kind of more filled out and a little more consistent. But I'd say second place finish, 85 wins.
I have the floor of this team, and I know I keep giving you crap about jinxing us, and you keep saying, every time you say, for those of you who are listening and not watching, Sheldon keeps saying, well, we can't be as bad as last year, and I keep making faces because, I don't think anybody saw last year happening to the team. In my mind, the floor is 76, 77 wins. Like, that is the floor. I don't realistically see us being below that. I think our ceiling's probably like 92 wins, but I think we probably finish in that 85 to 87 range. So I'm right with you as far as that goes. I think we are in the top 3 of the division. I think the Cubs are going to be better than people realize. I think they're going to give, and have that potential to sneak into that division race. Especially, they got Imanaga. They just stole Craig Counsell, the manager from the Brewers. And, I'm not sure that the Brewers will be as good as they were last year. They've lost some of their pitching depth. And so I think, there's good potential that the Brewers take a step back, but I see the Cubs and the Reds both taking steps forward. And then the Pirates could always have a good first half before they forget how to play baseball again and end up somewhere towards the bottom of the division. So in a perfect world, right, you have a 5-man rotation. Each of your 5 starters start 32 games, right? That's your perfect situation. That's 160 of your 162 games. So you're in a perfect world. Your 5 starting rotation pitchers, they start 160 games. How many do our 5 elder statesmen start? And with that, the other piece of this is, who is the 5th starter going to be once Sonny Gray comes back?
That's a great question. I think, given expectations, I like to frame it with last year too. I would say, first off, I guess they answer your question on the 5th starter. I have full faith that it's going to be Zach Thompson. I think that's my 5th starter. I think the way he pitched this spring, I think he left little to no doubt that he's the better option compared to Liberatore, but I guess we could see who actually ends up making that. And Matt's. I guess you're right there too.
Yes. Yeah, so it's like, I'm considering your top 5, Sonny Gray being one of those top 5. So you've already lost some starts out of him.
Yeah.
Because he's starting the season on the IL. So you're looking for Sonny Gray plus 4.
Right.
So I'm assuming, in my mind, it's Michaelis, Lance Lynn, Gibson. Yep. And I agree. I think Thompson's your 5th. I think Thompson has looked more impressive than Matz, and I think Matz has looked very impressive out of the bullpen every time he's been down there.
Agreed. For the number of starts, I mean, it really goes to, well, first off, it's hoping that Sonny Gray's injury that he's dealing with now that's nagging is not an issue anymore. I know the injury that he has is the opposite leg that he had problems with before. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, so hopefully that he's feeling 100% by the time he takes the mound, and we never see it like a nagging hamstring injury moving forward. Because I think Sonny Gray can be dependable. I think he can make, upwards of 25, 27, somewhere in that range. I think those middle guys. I mean, Michaelis is a workhorse for the most part too. He's gonna take a good handful of those starts. It's the 3 and 4 spot that I know they're innings eaters. I know they can take the ball every fifth day and they can pitch. The problem is it's another year later. They did it last year, but how much longer can we expect them to do it, right? So like we can go in and say, oh yeah, they're going to start 28 starts or something to that effect. And then they get hurt. And it's going to be a lot harder for them to rehab back to a spot where they can pitch again than, someone like Zach Thompson, who's younger and able to kind of recover faster. So in my eyes, I'd have to imagine that given your perfect rotation type thing, I don't like to root on injuries, but it's bound to happen that either Gibson or Lynn is going to be hurt for a decent amount of time. It's bound to happen, and it's more likely it's going to be one of those two. How much does it take away? I mean, it probably takes away one of those spots that somebody else is going to have to fill in, whether it's a Steven Matz coming out or filling in a role. Zach Thompson's already your fifth starter in this scenario. If Liberatore ends up doing well and sliding into, if they're going to do a sixth man rotation, I don't know. I'd say I can't imagine that they're not going to get a vast majority of those starts, but we've also seen what happens when our starters get injured.
So my number, for whatever it's worth, is 127.
I think it's pretty good.
I think we need 35 starts out of people not in our top 5 throughout the year.
What do you happen to have the number for how many starts we got out of our top 5 last year?
I don't.
Because I'm curious. I'd be curious to see what that. Because 35 sounds like a lot, but it's probably not that much, right?
I wouldn't. So it not, especially when you think about Waino missing. I mean, he missed like 10 or 15 starts himself.
Right.
You have somebody who gets a blister and they miss a start. You get you get a double header and you're trying not to pitch a guy too close together and you throw an extra start in there. So like, to me, I think 35 is the number. I think you've already got at least 1 to 3 probably with the Sonny Gray situation right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And again, you have 3 very, as I said, elder statesmen in your bullpen or in your starting rotation. At least one, if not multiple, of them are going to have something. And it's not saying season ending or anything else, but pull a hamstring, twist their ankle, blister on the finger, you name it. Something's going to happen. So I think they're all workhorses. They're all going to want to take the ball and they're all going to do their best too. But I think 127 is my number that I'm going to stick with.
I think it's a good number.
127, which gives them just each average just over 25 starts a piece, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's pretty generous as well.
And
I
honestly,
be wrong. I'm not always a generous person.
if that's what we end up hitting, I think our bullpen ends up giving us a lot of chances to win a lot of games for us this year. I mean, just for them to take the ball, go 4 or 5 innings, give up 3 runs, I think that our offense, hopefully our lineup, is able to slug. I mean, they're not going to put up 12 runs a game, but if our bullpen can keep us in it to where 7th and 8th inning we're having productive ABs from our lineup, we can win a lot of games that way, and that makes us that much of a scarier team, say we get into the playoffs and move forward that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it'll be interesting if that's how it plays out. I think we've got a good chance. Again, it's also going to depend on where those guys are pitching, right? Are they pitching well? Are they not pitching well? Are they feeling it? Again, yeah, they've done it for a long time, but when you've done it for a long time, especially pitching, sometimes that at some point, Father Time will catch up to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll see how it plays out. Who on the Cardinals this is a 3-part question. So brace yourself here. This is all about home runs. All about the Ding Dong Johnsons.
Love it.
Who hits the most home runs on the Cardinals this year?
I have a hard time not saying. I guess I could hedge my bet and say Nolan, but I'm probably gonna side with Nolan Gorman. I have to imagine that this is going to be a get right year for him. I mean, he had a good year last year. Hit a lot of Ding Dong Johnsons that way. So I think he continues doing the same. I think his health is better this year given the
changing his popcorn.
yeah, exactly. Just the lack of needing him at second, at least how we're set up now. we can kind of leave him in DH and not have to worry about his back as much. That's probably who my bet would be. I'd probably be Nolan Gorman.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Nolan Gorman is going to be the guy who leads the team in home runs this year. How many do you think he hits to lead the team?
How many did he have last year? Did he get 30,
31, 32 maybe?
Yeah. I could see him pushing like.
For those of you who are unaware, also, he hit 27 last year.
Really? But he only played like.
He missed a lot of games with his back. So, for those of you who missed the popcorn thing, there was an article, and the title of the article was that Nolan Gorman has fixed his back issues by switching what oil his popcorn is popped in. There's a lot of other things in the article. I don't know why that's what they went with, other than to catch people's attention in clickbait. So I heard it's not just popcorn, but I'm going to assume that the 10 pounds he lost and all of his everything all comes back to the popcorn.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I forget what oil it was too, but it was funny. I remember seeing that article like pop up on my phone and I was like, what is going on?
Did he switch to, one of them was peanut oil.
I think he switched from peanut oil.
I think he switched from peanut oil, but I don't remember what he switched to. If only John were here, the lesser John would know probably.
Well, since he only had 27, I mean, he gets into 30s, maybe like 35. I think 35 would be, considering he only played, I don't know how many. He probably only played like 110-ish games. I feel like he was out for a long time. So if he ends up playing 40 more games, he can hit 8 more home runs in 40 games. It's a home run every 5 games at his same rate, assuming he doesn't take another step.
Yeah, he had 406 at bats. Don't know how many games that was, but
gotcha.
I have him. I have it Nolan Gorman. My bet is on 38 homers, 38 Ding Dong Johnsons. I think that's what he'll hit. I don't know why 38. It just sounds like a great number. I think he's got 40 home run power. I just don't think he's quite there yet. I think in a couple of years he's going to hit 40 plus if he stays healthy and continues to eat the right type of popcorn.
Yep, amen.
The last part of the Ding Dong Johnson question of all: how many guys on our team hit the 20 home run mark?
Ooh, that's a really good question. All right,
I asked John this on a previous episode, so
we're going to assume both Nolans, Goldie, Wilson, Jordan Walker. Where am I at? That 5?
You're up to 5.
I don't know if anybody... The problem that you reach now is ABs for some of these players, right? So, like, I mean, Donovan isn't going to get the 20, but would he even really get the ABs to get 20, right? Newbar, I don't see getting 20, but maybe he does. Maybe he surprises. I'd say 5. I'd say 5 is a. I go to the sports book and I put down 5 as my bet.
So, I love this little fun piece of information. So, my bet is on. I think realistically, I could see us getting to 6, and I think I say could. I think 5 is the safe bet. If I were to put money on it, it'd be 5. But I think 6 could be there. Newt hit 14, I think, each of the last 2 years. And Brendan Donovan was at 11 before they shut him down. So they both have the potential.
Right.
They're a hot streak away. But I don't see... Mason Wynn is not going to jack 20 homers. So
nope.
I think 5 is your safe bet. All right. Last fun little bit. What 3 prospects are you most excited to see play this season? When they get called up, whenever that time may be.
So if I'm going off of, I know that this prospect will get called up. Is that the scenario, I guess?
Yeah. Assuming you think that they would get called up this year, who would you be most excited to see?
All right.
Because a couple of mine I think will get called up, but
yeah,
we don't know.
Okay. Yet. I will go first and foremost, since he did get sent down, Victor Scott. That's who I
Mm-hmm.
want. First and foremost, before seeing him this spring, I had my number 2 prospect as the number 1 that I wanted to see up here. But the way that he showed out this spring, the speed that he's continued to showcase, it just seems like he's just taking crazy leaps and bounds to being major league ready one day. So, and I think that day's today, but we'll see what ends up happening in the next week. But Victor Scott 1. I'm going to put Tink Hence at 2.
Victor Scott is actually Victor Scott the second, not Victor Scott one. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'm going to put Tink Hence at 2. I do think the only way that he comes up is we aren't doing as well, and we have an issue in our bullpen, something like that. I think he gets plugged in the bullpen and see what he does from there. But I'd love to see his stuff. His stuff's electric. I mean, you see what he does in these all-star games. You see what he does, and when he gets his starts in the minors, he is going to be the future ace of this team, and I'd love to see him up here sooner rather than later. That'd be my number 2, and then I think my number 3. There's a couple of different options you can go. I think Sajasi would be cool to see up here. His bat is the most intriguing part for me. I mean, he fits the prototypical short, scrappy, utility type player that the Cardinals love.
He feels a lot like Brendan Donovan to me.
Yes, yeah, but with an absolute
much higher bat potential.
Yes, which I think he also, while he can play a lot of different positions and field fine, he's a step down from what Donovan can do in the field. So you get that give and take. But I think JC's bat up here. Let's say we end up injury ridden like a lot of teams are during the season as it wears on. You need some pop off the bench, or you need someone to plug in. I think JC would be a nice plug in to see what he can do with major league pitching. So those would be my 3.
So my number 1 is Tink Hence. I'm so excited to see him pitch at the major league level. I think there's 2 ways that I see him getting called up. One is we've already lost out, and they just want to get him major league innings. If that's the case, I'm not upset by that. The other, I think, is actually as bullpen help for a stretch run and for the playoffs. And we've seen the Cardinals do this before with great success. One of our starters this year was one of those players who helped us down the stretch to win a World Series, in Lance Lynn back in 2011. So, I mean, that was his rookie year. The guy came out, played lights out. He was huge. And so I could see Tink Hence, if we are looking to make a stretch run, and not that I expect us to win the World Series, but to make the playoffs and get some big leagues. That's a great way for him to get some huge experience in big league innings right away. Victor Scott the second is my number 2. So Victor Scott's my second.
I was waiting for it. Yeah.
He was right there. The guy's electric, as you said. His bat plays, his speed plays, his defense is amazing. I think he's going to be our everyday center fielder when we open the season next year. And there's a chance we could finish the season with him as our everyday center fielder, pending how things go and how people play. And again, we need the ability, and something baseball lacks, but the best teams can do it. We need the ability to manufacture runs without home runs in tight games. And he gives you that ability. And the last one, part of me wanted to go with Sajasi. Part of me wanted to go with Tekoa Roby. Excited to see both of them, but the one that I'm actually most excited about, and I think he'll get called up for at least a spot start or 2 this year, is Gordon Graceffo. Yep. We talk about him all the time. He keeps getting brought up. I want to see what we have in the guy. Michael McGreevy's the other one that I would love to see get a couple of spot starts if we need them, or double header days, right? When you get the expanded roster, you can pull somebody up. I want to see these guys come up. I want to see them pitch a game or 2, even if it's not a whole bunch, and start to get a feel for what we actually have in these guys who stuff maybe doesn't grade out the same way as a Tekoa Roby or Mason Wynn, or a Cooper Hjerpe, right? Like those guys all have stuff that just grades ridiculous, but that are supposed to be good solid, 3, 4, 5 potential starters down the line, do they actually have that potential, or are we just sitting and hoping for nothing? And are they taking up AAA innings from guys that we actually need to develop?
Right.
And so I think those would be my picks and kind of where I would see them going. So I've got all through all my questions except for one for you. Who wins the World Series this year?
That's a good one. Because I was actually thinking about this. I forgot where. I think it was MLB.com had posted an article about like the tier lists of teams, and it went from your bona fide contenders like all the way down to your bottom feeders, and they had like little breaks of tiers here and there. And smart money would be on the Dodgers just for the insane offseason that they had, the collection of talent that they have. If you told me Dodgers versus the field, I'm taking the field, just because I feel like it'll take. They did go all in, but I don't think this is a make or break year for them this year. I think if next year they don't win a series either this year or next year, I think they can start panicking. I pick them to win it next year with Shohei being able to get back on the mound as well. As for the team that'll do it, I don't know. I think there's a lot more parity at the top now than there was even a couple of years ago when it comes to teams that have the talent to win it all, but actually have the experience now to actually go out and do it. I do like the Braves. I think the Braves would probably be my pick if I had to pick one team to do it out of the East there. I mean, Astros are strong. Dodgers obviously will be strong. Phillies will make a run. There's a lot of good teams out there. Definitely wouldn't bet on any team in the Central, North or NL or AL. I'm not picking either Central. But yeah, I would say if I had to place a bet today, it'd probably be on the Braves. But next year, if you wanted me to put a future down, it's on the Dodgers.
I also went with the Braves for this season.
Oh, really?
And I think they've got the experience to do it. They can manufacture runs. They've got speed. They've got, bats. They've got pitching. More importantly, I say more importantly, but a big piece, they went to try to bolster the starting rotation. They have Chris Sale from Boston. If that guy can even be a fraction of what he once was, they already have who I think is the best pitcher in the major leagues on their staff, and now they're adding to that, a veteran guy who knows how to pitch. And even if he, like I said, even if he's pitching to a 3 or 3.5 ERA, nothing like the 2s that he was consistently putting up in his prime, that gives them a leg up on the competition. And I think they, playing in the East, while they have the Phillies and Marlins, it's not near the gauntlet that other teams will have to go through. And I think the AL is more top heavy, has better top end teams than the NL. Apparently, don't sleep on Arizona though, because if you told me you saw Arizona making the World Series last year, I'm going to call you a bold-faced liar.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So, but you've got the Dodgers, you've got the Diamondbacks, who are potential. That they got hot at the right time. But over in the AL, right, you talked about the Astros, but the Astros have to compete with the Rangers all year.
Yep.
You look at the Yankees. Well, the Yankees still have the Rays. They still have the Orioles. They still have the Blue Jays. And Boston's looking like they're going to be better this year again, too. And so I just think there's a lot more parity in the AL than the NL. I think the NL is really, in my mind, a 2-horse race between Atlanta and the Dodgers. I just think Atlanta's got him. If Shohei was pitching, I think, again, I agree, Dodgers have the edge there because Shohei is out, brings a whole nother level when he's able to pitch for you as well, but I don't see it. So, all right. Do you have any other hot takes or things that I didn't get you on tonight?
No,
or any questions or things you want to try to stump me with?
Oh, geez. I was trying to think of any particular hot takes. We kind of hit a lot when it comes to the Cardinals season and a lot of like hypotheticals and what could happen. I guess I could ask where do you, as a ceiling, you talked about our ceiling could be, I think, in the 90s ish for games 1. What do you think our ceiling is in regards to how far we could make it in the playoffs? Like, do you see us as a team that could make the NLCS? Do you see us?
If we make the NLCS, I see us with the potential to make the NLCS. But it's going to be under very particular circumstances. We'd have to get in. And I see it being a Tampa Bay Rays style where it's 4 or 5 innings and then your bullpen has to be there able to shut the door for the rest of the game. Otherwise, I don't think we have a chance. And in the playoffs, you can get away with that, right? You don't have games back-to-back days. You don't have to worry about that kind of thing. And so it's easier to get your bullpen guys. You can pitch all of them every game because they've got that extra day of rest. So they can all go an inning, right? If you've got 5 guys that you can rely on, okay, well, I need 4 innings out of my starter, and I've got these guys that can each pitch an inning, and we'll just keep rolling with it, right? So if we make the NLCS, that's how we do it.
I totally agree. I think my top end, like, I've got completely homer glasses on NLCS, using that same formula. We manage our bullpen, and the beautiful thing about being in the NL Central is there's probably going to be a wild card team that has a better record than us if we were to win the Central, and we still get in, and we can use that formula of our starter giving us 4 1/3, going to our bullpen, and the rest is history. So, but that means we have to manage not only have our lineup being able to produce offense, not only by hitting the long ball when it's there, but also by manufacturing runs, using speed, things of that nature. We also have to make sure that we're healthy enough in our bullpen and in our front end, so that way we can get to our strength, which I think is going to be our bullpen this year.
I want to take you back to my favorite favorite baseball game. When I think of any one baseball game, when I think of like stands out in my memory that I would love to go back and watch live over and over and over and over again. It's in 2011, the NLDS Game 5. Roy Halladay, Chris Carpenter, both of them went complete games. We manufactured 1 run. Rafael Furcal hit a triple. We hit a sac fly, and that was it. We manufactured a run, and our pitching shut the door. We don't have a Chris Carpenter. We're not going to have a Chris Carpenter this year, right? Maybe someday again. But that type of pitcher is a rare breed, and they don't really exist, right? The fact that him and Halladay were both pitching, we're not afraid to pitch 120, 130 pitches, whatever it took to get through the game to let their team win. I remember Chris Carpenter diving headfirst to first base to get somebody out. I mean, like, the game was absolutely insane, but the ability to shut the door pitching wise, so in this case with your bullpen, and the ability to manufacture runs when you need to is huge in the playoffs, which again, I think is where we really could use somebody like a Victor Scott II, kind of as that spark plug. If somebody gets on base, you can steal a base. It just takes 1 base hit, right? You get a single, stolen base hit, you've got to run. And I think that's the path for the Cardinals in the playoffs. Because if we try to go homer for homer with Atlanta or the Dodgers, we're going to lose.
100%.
Or even the Phillies for that matter. I mean, the Phillies still have Schwarber and Harper. And last time I checked, both of them love to jack bombs. So
100%.
So another fun thing. So we are recording this on Tuesday night. The Blues just lost in overtime to the Golden Knights, putting us 5 games out of a playoff spot. Do the Blues make the playoffs this year?
That loss.
10 games to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's looking dire. First off, we needed a regulation win against Vegas. So a point, while more helpful than no points, doesn't really help us, considering that we're chasing Vegas, not necessarily chasing LA like we thought we were going to be. I think it's going to be tough. I mean, I know we've been playing really good hockey. I mean, if we played this level of hockey the whole year, Berube would still be here, and we would be probably a 2 or 3 seed in our division. So it's one of those things that I don't know. I don't think we make the playoffs. I was kind of resigned before this game, just kind of how both Vegas and LA were playing. But I think it's really good to see that we have these players that can do this and to build on it for next year. But yeah, I don't think we make the playoffs this year.
Alrighty. And if there's one team that I don't want to win the Stanley Cup this year, That would be the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
Um, I would do anything to see them have a beautiful first round exit
Yep.
and go home. Not just because I hate them as a team and as a franchise and for the things they did to Benner the year they won the cup, but also because they are owned by the one and only Stan Kroenke.
Yep.
That guy's awful. He's worthless, and I
Boo.
could care less about him. So, with that, Stan Kroenke, we hate you, and good night, everyone.